Hello there. If you are ready to journey into the deepest corners of your mind and the hidden genius of nature, lean back, take a deep breath, because once you step through this door, nothing will ever look the same again. Today, we dive into the darkest depths of the ancient oceans. We are here to meet a predator so immense that its shadow alone could freeze the heart of any living creature. A king that ruled the blue void for 20 million years. This is the story of the Megalodon. The most iconic relic of the Megalodon is, of course, its tooth. Hold your hand out, fingers spread. A large Megalodon tooth would span from your wrist to the tip of your middle finger. It is a triangle of serrated glossy stone, often as large as a human hand. But this tooth was not a solitary dagger. It was one of up to 276 in a revolving conveyor belt of death, arranged in 5 rows in a jaw that could open 1.8 meters wide enough to swallow a modern adult human whole without touching the sides. Now, imagine the force behind that jaw. Biomechanical studies, based on jaw musculature reconstructions from fossilized vertebrae and comparisons with great white sharks, estimate the Megalodon's bite force at a staggering 108,514 to 182,201 newtons. To grasp this number, the mighty Tyrannosaurus rex, the land's most famous predator, is estimated to have bitten with a force of about 57,000 newtons. The Megalodon's bite was 3 times stronger. It could crush the skull of a prehistoric whale or snap the paddle-like flipper of a giant sea turtle with the ease we crack a walnut. But power is nothing without delivery. The Megalodon was not a sluggish brute. Fossil evidence suggests a creature reaching lengths of 15 to 18 meters, possibly more. That's longer than a city bus. Its body was a torpedo of muscle, built for explosive bursts of speed. And here we encounter its first secret weapon, regional endothermy. Unlike most fish, which are cold-blooded, ectothermic, the Megalodon, like some modern lamnid sharks, great whites, makos, had the ability to maintain certain body parts, its muscles, eyes, brain, and stomach, at a temperature significantly warmer than the surrounding water. This physiological furnace allowed it to be a dynamic, active hunter in a wide range of ocean temperatures, from tropical shallows to cooler, nutrient-rich currents. It was not confined by climate, it was a global citizen of the deep, its internal heat granting it dominion over all seas. This warm-bloodedness also hints at its metabolism. It was likely a high-energy predator, needing vast amounts of food, perhaps up to 2,500 pounds of whale blubber and meat per day, to fuel its enormous warm body. Every aspect of its anatomy, from its teeth to its temperature, screamed one evolutionary imperative: consume energy at any scale. As you begin to visualize this creature in the soundscape of the deep, let the rhythmic pulse grow slightly louder. It is not the sound of a heart you hear, but the slow, powerful beat of tail strokes from a creature the size of a whale, but built like a missile. This was the true anatomy of a god, not of benevolence, but of pure, efficient, awe-inspiring predatory perfection. God's strength lies not only in its power but in its design. To understand the Megalodon as a living animal, we must move beyond the jaw and piece together the rest of its titanic form from the scattered clues geology has provided. The backbone of this mystery is, literally, its vertebrae. While teeth are plentiful, complete Megalodon vertebrae are rare treasures. Those that have been found are colossal, dinner plate-sized centra of calcified cartilage. Their size and growth rings tell a story of both immense size and surprisingly fast growth. Analysis suggests Megalodon may have grown quickly, especially in its youth, reaching sexual maturity in a relatively short time, a necessity for an apex predator in a competitive world. Each vertebra was a central hub for massive musculature. The muscle blocks along its spine would have been as large as oil drums, powering a tail that could propel its 50 to 60-ton bulk through the water with terrifying acceleration. Then, there is the question of its skin. While no fossilized skin exists for Megalodon, we can infer from its relatives. Its body would have been clad in dermal denticles, tiny, tooth-like scales that are the defining feature of shark skin. These denticles would have been larger and thicker than a great white's, forming a sandpaper-like, hydrodynamic armor. They reduced drag, allowing silent, efficient movement, and may have offered some protection in clashes with other giants. Imagine running your hand along its flank. It would not feel like fish skin, but like rough, industrial-grade sandpaper on a living mountain. Its senses were its crown jewels. As the sonar ping in our soundscape suggests, we can only imagine their acuity. Electroreception would have been paramount. Specialized pores in its snout, the ampullae of Lorenzini, could detect the minute electrical fields generated by the beating hearts and swimming muscles of prey from miles away. In the dark depths or murky water, a struggling whale would have lit up in its mind like a beacon. Its olfaction was likely legendary. A single drop of blood in an Olympic-sized swimming pool is detectable to a modern great white. Scale that up for Megalodon, with nares, nostrils, the size of dinner plates, and you have a scent tracking system that could find a wounded whale across oceanic distances. It didn't need to see its prey to know it was there. And what of its eyes? In the dim mesopelagic zone where it often hunted, large eyes would have been essential. As a regional endotherm, it could have kept its eyes and brain warm, maintaining neural and visual acuity even in cold, deep water where other predators would be sluggish. Its gaze, if we could meet it, would not have been the blank stare of a fish, but the focused, calculating assessment of a warm-blooded, intelligent hunter. This brings us to its most debated feature, its fin. The famous dorsal fin. No fossil exists, but based on hydrodynamic models and its role as a pursuit predator, it was likely immense, a stabilizing sail of cartilage and tissue rising 1.5 to 2 meters above the water. For a prehistoric human on a raft, had they existed, seeing that dark triangle cut silently through the waves would have been the last sight before the world disappeared beneath them. As the soundscape deepens, let the sonar pings become more frequent, painting an echoic picture of this ghost. We hear the imagined rush of water over dermal denticles, a low-frequency vibration that might be the hum of its electroreceptive field, and the eternal, slow pulse of its movement. This was not a monster of fantasy. It was a real, breathing, sensing entity, a biological machine perfected over millennia to be the ultimate consumer in the blue desert of the open ocean. Its anatomy made it more than a hunter. It was a force of nature, an unavoidable clause in the contract of life in the Miocene and Pliocene seas. To be a whale of that era was to live with the constant, low probability but catastrophic risk of the shadow's strike. We have built the Megalodon from its teeth outward, its crushing bite, its warm-blooded engine, its powerful musculature, its hyperacute senses. But to see this god as a living being, we must place it in its world and understand the culmination of its design, its ecological role. It was not merely a very large shark, it was the keystone predator of its epoch, a sculptor of marine ecosystems for millions of years. The Megalodon's anatomy dictated its menu. With a bite force capable of crushing bone and a jaw designed for shearing, it was a specialist in macropredation, hunting large, fatty, energy-rich prey. Its primary food source was almost certainly cetaceans, early baleen whales, squalodontids, toothed whales, and perhaps even early, smaller species of sperm whales. These whales were themselves giants, but the Megalodon was their perfect counter. Its hunting strategy was likely one of power and precision, not protracted chase. It would have targeted vital, vulnerable areas, the flukes, tail fins, to cripple mobility, the pectoral flippers to disable steering, or the soft, blubber-rich underbelly. This predation pressure shaped whale evolution. The rise of the Megalodon coincides with trends in whale morphology: larger body sizes, harder to kill, more robust vertebrae, better resistance to crushing, and potentially changes in migration patterns. The Megalodon was an evolutionary driver, a deadly selective force that pushed its prey to become faster, smarter, or more resilient. In a very real sense, the whales of today carry the genetic legacy of having survived an era of the shadow. But even a god has limitations. Its immense size and warm-blooded metabolism came at a tremendous energetic cost. It needed to eat the caloric equivalent of a few large whales per month. This made it vulnerable to changes in prey availability. Its reign was one of abundance, in a world of warm, productive seas teeming with megafauna. Its anatomy was a perfect adaptation to that specific world, a world that was already destined to change. As we complete our anatomical reconstruction, a final, humbling thought emerges. All our knowledge of this 18-meter, 60-ton superpredator comes from hard parts, teeth and vertebrae. The rest, the muscle, the flesh, the beating heart, the complex brain, the living presence, is lost to time. We are staring at the fossilized shadow of a ghost, trying to imagine the creature that cast it. Our sonar pings in the dark, hoping to hit something more than an echo. The Megalodon's anatomy reveals a paradox. It was both invincible and fragile. invincible in its prime, against any single creature in its domain. Fragile in its dependence on a stable, energy-rich world. Its teeth, which symbolize its power to us, were also its Achilles' heel. They were tools for consuming a specific kind of prey in a specific kind of ocean. When that ocean changed, the tools, for all their perfection, became obsolete. Now, as the whale song in our soundscape grows slightly frantic, then cuts off abruptly, we transition from the being of the Megalodon to its actions. How did this perfectly engineered predator actually hunt? Its methods were as calculated and devastating as its bite. It was not a mindless eating machine. It was a strategist of the deep. Welcome back to the eternal shadow. We have built the predator. Now we witness it in action. Forget the frenzied, surface-breaking attacks of modern great whites. The Megalodon was a different kind of hunter. It was a strategist of the abyss, an ambush predator of a scale the world has never seen since. Its hunting method was not about speed over distance, but about power, precision, and patience. It didn't just bite its prey, it dismantled it. Modern great white sharks often use a bite and spit technique on large prey like elephant seals, a debilitating bite followed by a retreat, allowing the prey to weaken from blood loss before consumption. For a predator the size of Megalodon, hunting prey as large as a whale, this method would be inefficient and dangerous. A panicked, 30-ton whale could deliver a fatal blow with its fluke. Megalodon needed a fight-ending first strike. The fossil record provides a grisly clue. Whale bones from the Miocene and Pliocene, often found with Megalodon teeth nearby, show distinctive damage. Not just random bite marks, but focused, shearing impacts on the most vulnerable kinetic points. The edges of the fluke, tail, vertebrae, the base of the pectoral flippers, the leading edges of the dorsal fin. This is not the pattern of a frenzied feeder, it is the signature of a tactical strike. The strategy was likely this. From the depths, or from below, the Megalodon would target a migrating whale pod. It would select a target, perhaps a juvenile, a pregnant female, or an older individual. Then, with a burst of speed from its powerful tail, it would aim not for the kill, but for incapacitation. A single, crushing bite to the tail stalk could sever tendons, crush vertebrae, and render the whale's primary means of propulsion useless. Another targeted bite could cripple a flipper, destroying its ability to steer. Imagine the scene. In the sun-dappled upper ocean, a whale moves peacefully. From the blue void beneath, a shape darker than the deep itself rises. Not with a roar, but in a terrible silence. The first sign of attack is not a sight, but a sensation, a catastrophic pressure, a shudder through the whale's body as several tons of bite force are applied with surgical precision. The whale's world explodes into pain and confusion. Its powerful tail, the engine of its life, goes limp or flaps uncontrollably. It is now adrift, crippled, and terrified. This is where the Megalodon's warm-blooded metabolism gave it another advantage. While the wounded whale would eventually go into shock or exhaust itself, the Megalodon could wait. It could circle in the cold depths, its regional endothermy keeping its muscles and brain active, while the whale, now a stationary or slow-moving target above, gradually weakened. The hunt became a siege. The silent hunter had turned a mighty, mobile giant into a floating larder. This method also minimized risk. A crippled whale could not fight back effectively. Its mighty fluke slap, a blow that could stun or injure the shark, was neutralized. The Megalodon could then feed at its leisure, using its saw-like teeth to shear off immense chunks of blubber and flesh. It was a hunter that understood biomechanics on an instinctual level. It attacked not the whole, but the system, the propulsion, the steering, knowing that to disable these was to claim the whole. As the soundscape immerses us in this hunt, hear the low whale vibration become a distorted, panicked thrashing. Then, a deep, visceral crunch. Not a sharp snap, but a dense, muffled sound of immense pressure applied to bone and cartilage. It is a sound that carries finality. The thrashing becomes weaker, more erratic. The hunter's deep pulse remains steady, patient, circling. The open water ambush on whale pods was likely the Megalodon's signature tactic, but its hunting repertoire was as vast as the oceans it roamed. To be the apex predator for 20 million years requires adaptability. The silent hunter was also a master of environmental manipulation and deep water strategy. Consider the oceanographic features of its time. Coastal upwellings, where cold, nutrient-rich water surged to the surface, creating plankton blooms that attracted small fish, then larger fish, then whales. Megalodon would have known these areas as buffets set by the sea itself. It could patrol these rich corridors, a shadow moving against the current, its electroreception and olfaction scanning the dense biological soup for the specific signature of a whale. But its true domain may have been the mesopelagic zone, the twilight layer between 200 and 1,000 meters deep. Here, light fades to perpetual gloom. For a warm-blooded hunter with enhanced senses, this was a perfect shroud. From this dark middle layer, it could look upward, silhouetting its prey against the faint light from the surface, a tactic known as contraillumination hunting. The whale above would be visible, while the shark below would be invisible in the dark. It could stage a vertical ambush with minimal warning, a colossal shape materializing from nothingness. This brings us to the concept of the benthic ambush in areas with complex topography. Ancient underwater canyons, seamounts, and continental drop-offs. A megalodon could have rested on the seafloor near a migratory choke point, its gray bulk blending with the substrate, conserving energy. When the vibration of a passing whale pod was detected, it would lift off the bottom with a powerful sweep of its tail, intercepting its target from an unexpected lateral or rear angle. The attack on the flukes would be even more effective here, as the whale might be focused on forward migration, not on a threat rising from the abyss below and behind. There is also intriguing, though speculative, evidence from fossilized whale ear bones, tympanoperiodics. Some show extreme compression fractures. Could a megalodon have used sonic disruption as a tactic? By creating a powerful low-frequency blast with its tail or body, a boom in the water, it could have disoriented or even temporarily stunned prey, especially other sound-sensitive cetaceans, before moving in for the crippling bite. While unproven, it fits the profile of a hunter that used every possible advantage. The hunt was not always a solo endeavor. While we have no direct evidence of pack hunting, the ecological pressure they exerted and their potential intelligence, inferred from brain size relative to body, make coordinated, loose-knit group attacks a possibility, especially against the largest whale species or in rich feeding areas. A pair of megalodons could strategically separate a mother from her calf or flank a large whale, attacking from two sides to overwhelm its defenses. Through all these strategies, one theme emerges: energy efficiency. Every aspect of the hunt, the patient stalking, the targeted strike on kinetic points, the use of ocean currents and topography, was designed to maximize caloric gain while minimizing caloric expenditure and risk. The silent hunter was a master economist of force. It did not waste energy on prolonged chases or dangerous frontal assaults. It invested its energy in intelligence, sensory gathering, positioning, and a single, devastating transaction of power. As the soundscape evolves, we move from the scene of the open water kill to the quiet of the deep-sea staging ground. The deep pulse is slower now, resting. We hear the subtle groan of underwater geology, a seamount shifting. The low-frequency songs of distant whales pass through the water like gossamer threads, and we can almost feel the hunter's senses twitching, parsing the data, calculating distance, size, and vulnerability. It is a mind at work in the dark, a consciousness shaped by one purpose: to find the next meal that will sustain its godlike form. We have followed the megalodon from its deep water lies to its crippling strikes. But the hunt's conclusion, the consumption, reveals the final, brutal elegance of this predator's relationship with its world. The kill was not the end of the strategy, it was the gateway to a feast of staggering scale, one that shaped not just the predator's life, but the very ecology of the ancient seas. Once a whale was immobilized, the megalodon faced the challenge of dismantling a creature nearly as large as itself. Its teeth, often described as serrated steak knives, were tools for more than just shearing. The robustness of the crown and the sheer width of the blade suggest they were also used as wedges. The shark would likely lock its jaws onto a massive section of blubber and muscle, then use its immense body weight and torque to twist, literally wrenching free a portion of the carcass weighing hundreds of kilograms. This bite and twist technique is seen in modern great whites on seals, scaled up to a nightmarish degree. The feeding itself would have been a scene of apocalyptic proportions. A single megalodon could consume upwards of a ton of meat in one sitting. As it fed, the water for miles around would become saturated with blood and oil, a biological beacon announcing a free meal. This attracted other scavengers, smaller sharks, bony fish, and possibly other megalodons. The feeding frenzy around a whale carcass, with a megalodon at its center, would have been one of the most concentrated events of biomass consumption in Earth's history, a temporary, violent vortex in the ocean's energy flow. This brings us to a profound ecological role, the Megalodon as a keystone scavenger and nutrient cycler. Its hunting created massive food falls. A single whale carcass sinking to the abyssal plain, partially consumed by the shark, would sustain entire ecosystems of deep-sea scavengers for months or years. In this way, the Megalodon was not just a top-down predator controlling whale populations. It was also a pump, transporting nutrients from the productive surface waters down to the lightless depths, supporting life in the eternal dark. Its shadow nourished the very abyss it hunted in. But such a specialized, high-stakes hunting strategy came with vulnerabilities. Its focus on large, fatty prey, primarily whales, made its existence inextricably linked to theirs. The success of the silent hunter depended on a stable, abundant population of large cetaceans. It was an evolutionary bet placed on a specific type of ocean, warm, full of giants. As long as that world persisted, the Megalodon was unchallenged. But ecosystems are not static. The hunter's perfection was also its potential trap. As the soundscape of the deep-sea hunt fades, we are left with the aftermath. The slow, sinking detritus of the feast, the distant sounds of smaller scavengers arriving, and the deep, satisfied pulse of the hunter moving away. Its immense energy needs temporarily met. It is a cycle as old as the hills, played out on a scale we can barely conceive. Now, the hunter's thoughts, if we can imagine them, turn from the immediate need to hunt to the longer need to propagate. Where does a creature of such immense power and vulnerability raise its young? The answer lies not in the open deep, but in the sheltered, sun-dappled shallows of a forgotten world. Our next chapter descends into the nurseries of the giants, where the next generation of shadows began their lives, already predators in a world they would one day rule. Welcome to the cradle of the shadow. We have witnessed the adult Megalodon in its domain, the deep, open ocean, a realm of calculated ambushes and titanic struggles. But every giant has a beginning. This chapter descends into the sheltered, warm shallows of the Miocene and Pliocene coasts, the nurseries where Megalodon pups entered the world, not as vulnerable infants, but as instant apex predators in their own right. The fossil record provides startling evidence. In certain geographic areas, notably parts of what are now Florida, Panama, and Spain, concentrations of small to medium-sized Megalodon teeth have been found, often in association with the remains of small whales, dolphins, and seals. These are not the scattered teeth of migrating adults. These are nursery grounds. Like many modern sharks, including great whites, tigers, and hammerheads, Megalodon likely gave birth in shallow, protected coastal areas, lagoons, bays, and continental shelves. These waters offered warmer temperatures, abundant smaller prey for growing pups, and, critically, protection from their own kind. For an adult Megalodon, a nursery shallow would have been a restrictive, unprofitable environment. But for a pup, It was a perfect training ground. And what a pup it was! Based on the size of the smallest fossil teeth and comparisons with live-bearing shark relatives, scientists estimate that a newborn megalodon was already 2 to 2.5 meters, 6.5 to 8 feet, long at birth, roughly the size of a large modern adult human. It entered the world not as a helpless fry, but as a formidable predator in its own right, equipped with a full set of functional, serrated teeth. This extreme precociality, being highly developed at birth, was a necessity. Megalodon was likely ovoviviparous or possibly viviparous with oophagy, meaning the pups hatched from eggs inside the mother and then, in a brutal form of intrauterine competition, the strongest pups would consume their weaker siblings and unfertilized eggs. This survival of the fittest began before birth. Only the largest, most aggressive embryos survived to be born. A megalodon pup was, from its first breath, a victor in a primordial battle. It emerged into the sunlit shallows not as an innocent, but as a seasoned survivor, already programmed to hunt. Its first prey would not be whales, but the abundant smaller fauna of the nursery: fish, sea turtles, small seals, and early dolphins. Its 2-meter size gave it dominance over almost every other creature in the shallow ecosystem. It would have learned the fundamentals of hunting: ambush from seagrass or sandy bottoms, short, explosive bursts of speed, and the sensory thrill of the strike. These nurseries were not kindergartens. They were boot camps for baby giants. As the soundscape paints this scene, hear the deep pulse of the pup's heartbeat, steadier and more frequent than an adult's. Hear the swift, confident movement through the water. Not yet the powerful economy of scale glide of the adult, but a more agile, curious exploration. The squeaks of small dolphins take on a new, tense character. The slow grazing of a sea turtle becomes the sound of potential prey. The nursery is a paradise, but it is a paradise ruled by tiny, perfect replicas of the ocean's deadliest lord. The nursery was more than just a safe haven and a feeding ground. It was a critical developmental bottleneck that shaped the very survival of the species. Let us delve deeper into the ecology of these ancient shark nurseries and the brutal logic that governed a megalodon pup's early life. The choice of nursery site was not random. These areas, often identified by dense clusters of juvenile teeth in the fossil record, shared key characteristics: warm, stable water temperatures, beneficial for the growth of cold-blooded young, though they had some warm-blooded capacity, abundant and easy prey, and physical barriers like sandbars, coral reefs, or mangrove forests that limited access by large predators, including adult megalodons. These shallows were the kingdom of the young. Within this kingdom, a strict size-based hierarchy existed. The largest pups, those perhaps a few months old and nearing 3 to 4 meters, would dominate the prime hunting territories, the channels where prey entered, the deep holes in the lagoon. Smaller newborns might stick to the very shallow margins, hunting crabs and small fish among the roots and seagrass. This intraspecific competition started immediately after birth, driving rapid growth. To stay in the relative safety of the nursery, A pup had to grow quickly enough to avoid being outcompete for food, yet not so large that it became energetically inefficient in the shallow water. Their diet evolved with their size. A newborn might start with bony fish and small rays. At 3 meters, it could take young sea turtles and small seals. By the time it reached 4 to 5 meters, still a juvenile by Megalodon standards, it might begin to practice the family trade on small cetaceans, early porpoises, or the calves of larger whales that ventured too close to the nursery borders. Fossil evidence from some nursery sites includes whale bones with bite marks matching juvenile Megalodon tooth spacing, the ancient equivalent of a training dummy. This practice was vital. The specialized cripple the whale hunting technique of the adults was not instinctual in its full complexity. It was a learned behavior, refined over years. In the nursery, a juvenile might harass a dolphin pod, testing bites on flukes and flippers, learning how different prey moved and reacted. A failed attack on a nimble dolphin in the shallows was a lesson with low stakes. A failed attack on a full-sized whale in the open ocean was a death sentence. The nursery period likely lasted for several years, perhaps until the shark reached 6 to 7 meters in length. At this point, it faced a critical juncture: natal dispersal. The sheltered lagoon that had been its whole world would become a cage. Its energy needs would outstrip the local prey supply. Its size would make maneuvering in the shallows cumbersome. Instinct, or perhaps diminishing food returns, would drive it to venture beyond the protective barriers, into the open ocean, the domain of the adults. This moment of departure was the most dangerous in a young megalodon's life. It was leaving a world where it was the apex predator to enter a world where it was, temporarily, medium-sized game. It would now face the full spectrum of open ocean threats: killer whales, or their ancient relatives, large predatory fish, and most dauntingly, adult megalodons. Cannibalism is common in many shark species, and a 7-meter juvenile would be a sizable meal for a 16-meter adult. The young shark's survival depended on stealth, speed, and the hunting skills honed in the nursery. As the soundscape follows a growing juvenile, here its movements become more powerful, less frantic. The playful lunges turn into focused, efficient strikes. The pulse grows deeper, slower, more like the adult rhythm. The sounds of the nursery, the gentle lap of waves on the shore, the chorus of small creatures, begin to feel distant, restrictive. A new sound intrudes: the low, powerful boom of oceanic swell against an outer reef or headland. It is the call of the open sea. The juvenile's pulse quickens with a mix of apprehension and innate pull. The dispersal of a juvenile megalodon from its nursery marks the end of its childhood and the beginning of its true integration into the oceanic food web. But the legacy of the nursery grounds extended far beyond the life of any single shark. These areas were evolutionary engines and ecological keystones for the entire species. The existence of specialized nurseries suggests a level of life history strategy akin to modern long-lived, intelligent marine animals. The mothers had to locate these optimal sites, perhaps returning to the regions where they themselves were born, a form of natal phallopatry. This behavior would concentrate reproductive effort in areas proven to be successful, creating generational strongholds for the species. The protection of these nurseries was, therefore, not just about individual pups, but about the future of the lineage. A change in sea level, a shift in currents, or the destruction of a coastal ecosystem could wipe out multiple generations at their most vulnerable stage, dealing a catastrophic blow to the population. Furthermore, the nurseries acted as population regulators. By concentrating juveniles in specific areas, they reduced predation pressure on smaller prey species across the wider ocean and minimized juvenile competition with adults for the massive whale prey. This spatial separation of life stages allowed both the young and the old to thrive without directly competing, a sophisticated ecological adaptation for a superpredator. The fossilized teeth from these nurseries are time capsules. Their chemistry can tell us about water temperature and salinity. Their wear patterns reveal diet. Their abundance at different sizes allows scientists to model growth rates and mortality rates. The data paints a picture of a challenging childhood, rapid growth under intense pressure, with only a fraction of pups surviving to adulthood. Each full-grown megalodon patrolling the deep was a statistical miracle, a survivor of multiple gauntlets from uterine cannibalism to the perilous first migration. As our juvenile finally passes the last submerged ridge and feels the infinite pull of the open ocean, its nursery becomes a memory, a warm, crowded, dangerous, and vital first chapter. The skills learned there, the ambush, the bite placement, the assessment of prey, are now its only currency in a much larger, much colder economy. This transition brings us to a pivotal question. In the open ocean, was the megalodon truly without peer? Was there any creature that could look this juvenile, or even its massive parents, in the eye and pose a legitimate threat? The answer lies not with another shark, but with a different kind of oceanic titan, a monstrous whale with teeth longer than a Tyrannosaurus rex's. The nursery prepared the young megalodon for many things, but perhaps not for the great duel. Now, as the soundscape fully embraces the open ocean, the juvenile's confident pulse is met with a new, formidable vibration. Not the song of a prey whale, but something else, a series of powerful, clicking sonar bursts, intelligent and probing. And beneath that, a deep, resonant, and challenging moan that seems to shake the water itself. The juvenile slows, sensing not prey, but a presence. The eternal shadow is about to meet another. Welcome to the ultimate what if of prehistory, grounded in fossil evidence. We have followed the megalodon's rise, its hunting, its childhood. But in the Pliocene oceans, it was not the only hyperpredator. There existed another, a creature that could stare into the shadow's eye and fight back. This is the story of Livyatan melvillei, a macroraptorial sperm whale named for the biblical Leviathan and Moby Dick's author. And this chapter explores the epic, speculative, yet scientifically plausible duel between the ocean's greatest shark and its most formidable whale. First, meet the contender. Livyatan was not like the gentle giant sperm whales of today. It was a killer, built on a similar body plan but optimized for hunting large prey. It reached lengths of 13.5 to 17.5 meters, comparable to a large megalodon. Its most terrifying feature was its skull, nearly 3 meters long, and armed with the largest functional teeth of any known animal. Each tooth in its massive, robust lower jaw could be over 36 centimeters, 14 inches, long and 12 centimeters wide. They were not the conical, grasping teeth of a modern sperm whale. They were huge, deeply rooted, interlocking tusks, designed for biting and holding on to massive, struggling prey. Its hunting strategy was likely the inverse of the megalodon's stealth. Livyatan probably used its powerful echolocation, the source of those intelligent clicks, to locate and disorient large prey, including other whales. Then, it would charge and engage in face-to-face combat, using its enormous head as a battering ram and its teeth to inflict horrific, crushing wounds. It was a brawler, a whale that evolved to hunt other apex predators. Its likely diet? Other whales, giant squid, and possibly large sharks. So, we have our combatants, the silent surgeon, Megalodon, versus the echoing brawler, Livyatan. Their territories overlapped in the warm, productive coastal waters of the Miocene and Pliocene. Encounters were inevitable. But what would such an encounter look like? It would likely begin with detection. The Megalodon, cruising silently, senses the powerful electrical and vibrational field of the massive whale. The Livyatan, scanning the depths with its sonar, paints a clear, terrifying image of the approaching shark, a shape of pure muscle and teeth. Both would recognize the other not as prey, but as a threat and a competitor. The initial phase would be a tense standoff, a slow circling in the blue haze. The Livyatan might emit louder, more aggressive clicks and moans, a sonic display of size and aggression. The Megalodon would rely on its lateral line and electroreception to track every subtle movement of the whale's immense flukes and flippers, looking for an opening. This would not be a hunt. It would be a duel for dominance, for the right to feed in that rich piece of ocean. Who would strike first? The shark, with its instinct for crippling attacks, might aim for the whale's fluke or pectoral fin, trying to disable the larger, more powerful animal. The whale, built to take and give punishment, might turn to face the charge head-on, presenting its battering ram skull and jaws full of daggers. The first contact would decide the battle's tenor. As the soundscape holds this prehistoric tension, here the two rhythms intensify. The Livyatan's clicks become rapid, aggressive bursts. The Megalodon's pulse quickens, its movement through the water becoming a tight, controlled arc. The gentle background sounds of the ocean fade away, as if the very sea is holding its breath for the clash of its two greatest champions. The first contact is not a clean bite or a crushing grip, but a tactical collision. The Megalodon, aiming for the classic crippling strike on the whale's propulsion, finds its charge met by a sudden, powerful turn from the Livyatan. The whale presents its broad, armored head. The shark's snout, packed with electroreceptors, slams into the dense, bony melon of the whale with a force that sends a shock wave through the water. A deep, thunderous thump audible for miles. Dazed but not deterred, the Megalodon peels away, its sandpaper skin scraping against the whale's tough hide. It circles, reassessing. The Livyatan, intelligent and aggressive, does not flee. It turns to keep the shark in front, emitting furious clicks. It understands the shark's strategy and defends its kinetic points with formidable awareness. Round 2. The Megalodon tries a different angle, coming from below and behind, targeting the trailing edge of the Livyatan's massive fluke. But the whale is ready. With the explosive contraction of its swimming muscles, it brings its fluke down in a devastating power stroke, not to swim, but to strike. The impact is like a living depth charge. The Megalodon veers, the blow glancing off its flank. It's a warning. This prey fights back with its own devastating weapons. Now, the Livyatan goes on the offensive. It charges, not with the shark's fluid grace, but with the terrifying, unstoppable momentum of a locomotive. Its mouth gapes open, revealing the forest of enormous, interlocking teeth in its lower jaw, the upper teeth fitting into sockets, a bone-crushing vice. It aims not for a disabling bite, but for a kill shot, to clamp its jaws across the shark's torso, crushing ribs, spine, and internal organs. The Megalodon, built for agility despite its size, twists away. The whale's teeth graze its dorsal fin, shearing off a chunk of cartilage. The water fills with the faint, metallic scent of shark blood. This is new for the shadow. It is wounded. Its own blood, not its prey's, clouds the water. The duel enters a brutal, damage exchange phase. The Livyatan's strength is its head and jaws, and its intelligence. The Megalodon's advantages are its maneuverability, its serrated slicing teeth, and its potentially faster healing, a trait in some sharks. The whale seeks a crushing, decisive grip. The shark seeks to exsanguinate the larger creature, using its slicing teeth to open deep, bleeding gashes on the whale's body, flippers, and head, whittling down the giant through blood loss and exhaustion. The soundscape becomes a chaos of violence. The thump of collisions. The shwick of serrated teeth tearing through blubber and skin. The deep, bellowing roar moan of the wounded Livyatan, a sound of rage and pain never before heard in the modern ocean. The furious, pressurized swirl of two behemoths turning, striking, and separating in a cloud of blood and bubbles. There are no rules. This is not a hunt, it is a war for ecological supremacy. The outcome of any single duel would depend on 1,000 factors: the size and age of each combatant, who landed the first solid blow, the water depth, even their hunger levels. A fully adult, 18-meter Megalodon might have the edge in power and slicing efficiency. A prime, 17-meter Livyatan might have the advantage in raw biting force and durability. Often, perhaps after a fierce exchange, one would break off, too injured to continue, allowing the other to claim the contested waters. But sometimes, The duel would be to the death. I end the suspended silence after the storm of violence. Both titans are wounded. The Megalodon bears deep, parallel grooves along its flank from the Livyatan's glancing bite, and its dorsal fin is torn. The Livyatan streams blood from several long, gashing wounds where the shark's teeth found purchase, the seawater around it tinged red. The duel has reached its tipping point. The next move will decide whether this is a draw, a retreat, or a death. The Megalodon, driven by an ancient, relentless programming, sees the blood in the water. Its own injuries are secondary to the primal signal of a weakened prey. It circles closer, its senses locking onto the largest source of vibration, the whale's pounding heart, laboring now from exertion and blood loss. The Livyatan, intelligent and proud, understands its disadvantage. The crushing bite it needs is harder to achieve now. Its movements are slower, its sonar clicks pained and erratic. But it is not defeated. It turns to face the shark once more, a low, defiant moan rumbling from its massive frame. The shark makes its final calculation. A direct frontal assault is suicide. Instead, it uses its last reserves of speed for one more kinetic strike. It dives deep, then angles upward, aiming not for the head or fluke, but for the junction where the Livyatan's powerful tail stalk meets its body, a spot thick with muscle and vital for propulsion, but less armored than the skull. It is a desperate, perfect shot. The Livyatan, sensing the attack, tries to pivot, but it's a fraction too slow. The Megalodon's jaws, lined with broken but still deadly teeth, close with a sickening crunch shear on the whale's posterior musculature. It's not a clean amputation, but it is a catastrophic injury. The whale's spinal cord is spared, but massive nerves and tendons are severed. The Livyatan's mighty fluke goes limp on one side. The whale's response is a final, titanic convulsion of rage and agony. It thrashes its immense head, its functional flipper, anything it can move. But its driving power is halved. It is now crippled, as the Megalodon had intended from the start. The shark releases its grip and pulls back, circling the now struggling giant. The duel is over. The shadow has won not by overpowering the whale, but by out-strategizing it, by applying its signature hunting method to an opponent of equal rank. The Livyatan's fate is sealed. It cannot swim effectively. It will slowly drown, or bleed out, or fall victim to scavengers. The Megalodon, itself grievously wounded, may or may not feed on the whale. Its own survival is now in question. It has won the battle, but at a cost that could prove fatal in the coming days. It turns and slowly, laboriously, disappears into the blue gloom, leaving the dying whale to its fate. This imagined duel, built on the anatomy and ecology of both animals, symbolizes the dynamic balance of the Pliocene seas. Neither predator was truly supreme. They kept each other's populations in check, their evolutionary arms race driving each to greater size and power. Theirs was a world where the apex was shared, contested, and deadly. But such a balance is precarious. It depends on an abundance of energy, of whales, seals, fish, to fuel these monstrous metabolisms. The world that created both the Megalodon and the Livyatan was already changing. As the Pliocene gave way to the Pleistocene, the oceans cooled, currents shifted, and the great whale migrations changed. The reign of the hyper-specialized macropredators was ending. The Livyatan vanishes from the fossil record first, perhaps unable to adapt its specialized hunting to new conditions. The Megalodon, the ultimate specialist, would cling on a little longer, a god in a world that was ceasing to believe in it. As the soundscape fades from the scene of the duel, hear the last weakening clicks of the Livyatan, and the slow, pained pulse of the departing Megalodon. The epic conflict is over, leaving only echoes in the deep. But a greater, slower, and more implacable conflict was brewing, not between predators, but between life and a changing planet. Welcome to the end of an era. We have witnessed the rise, the reign, and the rivals of the ultimate shark. Now, we confront its disappearance. The extinction of Otodus megalodon is not a mystery of sudden catastrophe, like the asteroid that felled the dinosaurs. It is a story of slow, creeping change, of a world evolving away from a perfect predator. This is the story of how a god was made obsolete by the turning of the earth. The primary driver was climate change. As the Pliocene epoch transitioned into the Pleistocene around 2.6 million years ago, the planet entered a period of pronounced glacial cycles, the ice ages. Global temperatures dropped. This cooling had a profound effect on the oceans. The great polar ice caps grew, locking up freshwater and lowering sea levels. Crucially, the thermohaline circulation, the planet-wide conveyor belt of ocean currents that redistributes heat and nutrients, was altered. Warm, shallow seas, the preferred habitat and nursery grounds for Megalodon, began to shrink and cool. For a warm-blooded, regionally endothermic predator, cooler water wasn't immediately fatal, but it was energetically expensive. Maintaining its internal furnace against a colder gradient required more calories. At the same time, its primary food source was fleeing. The great baleen whales, upon which adult Megalodon depended, began to adapt. To follow their own food sources, like krill blooms, and possibly to escape predation pressure, many whale species developed migration patterns that took them into the newly productive, but frigid, polar waters. These cold-rich seas were a barrier the Megalodon could not fully cross. Its physiology, while advanced, likely had limits. Sustained time in near-freezing water could have slowed its metabolism, dulled its senses, and made it a less effective hunter. The whales found a sanctuary in the cold. Simultaneously, the cooling oceans triggered ecosystem restructuring. The abundance of the diverse, medium-sized marine mammals, seals, sea cows, smaller whale species, that inhabited the warm coastal shelves, prey for juvenile and subadult megalodons, also declined or shifted. The great nursery grounds, dependent on stable warm shallows, were disrupted by falling sea levels and changing temperatures. The pipeline of new generations was being squeezed at both ends, fewer safe places to be born, and less food to grow on. The Megalodon was a specialist of the warm world ocean. Its entire biology, from its growth rate to its hunting strategy to its reproductive cycle, was calibrated for that specific, stable, productive environment. When that world fragmented and cooled, it had nowhere to go and no time to evolve a new strategy. Evolution favors generalists during upheaval, and the Megalodon was the ultimate specialist. As the soundscape immerses us in this cooling world, hear the whale songs becoming distant, moving toward the ever-present crackle of ice. The familiar, deep pulse of the Megalodon is heard less frequently, and when it is, it seems slower, more labored, as if moving through a thicker medium. The vibrant, busy sounds of the warm coastal ecosystems are replaced by the sparse, clear, and cold sounds of a simplified ocean. The climate change narrative is powerful, but the extinction of a global superpredator is rarely due to a single cause. It is a syndrome of stressors, a cascade of interrelated problems that ultimately overwhelm a species' ability to cope. For the Megalodon, the changing climate was the backdrop against which other, more immediate threats played out. One critical stressor was prey scarcity and increased competition. As the great whales migrated to colder refuges, the remaining predators in the warmer latitudes were forced to compete for a shrinking pool of large prey. This is where new, more agile competitors may have gained an edge. The ancestors of modern killer whales, or Sinus orca, were diversifying during this period. While individually much smaller, they hunted in highly intelligent, cooperative pods. Their strategies were flexible. They could take a wide range of prey, from fish to seals to other whales. They were generalists, the antithesis of the Megalodon. A pod of early orcas could potentially harass a Megalodon, steal its kills, or outcompete it for the remaining whale calves and sick adults. The giant shark, a solitary or loosely social hunter, had no answer for this coordinated, intelligent pressure. Furthermore, the evolution of prey itself worked against the Megalodon. Whales didn't just migrate, they also evolved. Many species became larger, faster, and more efficient swimmers. Some developed more robust social structures for defense. The cripple the whale strategy became harder to execute on prey that was more aware, more protected, and more capable of fleeing to cold sanctuaries. The nursery crisis compounded the problem. With sea levels dropping and coastlines changing, the warm, sheltered lagoons and shallow seas that served as crucial puppying grounds were dramatically reduced. Fossil evidence suggests a collapse in the abundance of juvenile Megalodon teeth in the late Pliocene. Fewer juveniles surviving to adulthood meant an aging population with no replacement, a demographic death spiral. Even if some adults could cling on, the species was genetically and numerically doomed. There is also the subtle role of sea level change on reproduction itself. Many shark species, including possibly Megalodon, rely on specific coastal geography for mating rituals and puppying. The dramatic regression of shallow seas during glacial maxima may have disrupted these complex behaviors, reducing successful reproduction. The megalodon's own biology worked against it. Its K-selected life history, large size, slow growth, late maturity, few offspring, meant it could not rapidly adapt or recover its numbers. When conditions deteriorated, it had little population resilience. A generation of reproductive failure could doom the species. Imagine the last generations. Scattered individuals, perhaps smaller than their ancestors, roaming a world that felt increasingly empty. The whale songs are distant ghosts in the water. The once teeming coastal shelves are quiet. Each hunt requires more energy, yields less reward. Encounters with swift, clever orcapods end in frustration or injury. The great shadow is becoming a phantom in its own domain, a relic of a warmer, richer world that exists now only in the deep memory of the ocean. As the soundscape conveys this lonely end, hear the megalodon's pulse, when it comes, as a deep, searching echo. It is answered not by the rich chorus of a thriving ecosystem, but by the cold silence of empty water, the distant, mocking clicks of orcas, and the relentless, advancing crackle of the ice. The sonar ping and ship's hum pull us into the present day, to the deepest, darkest place on Earth, the Mariana Trench. This brings us to the final, haunting question that lingers after the science. Could the megalodon still exist? Could the eternal shadow be hiding in the abyssal plain, unknown to science? The idea is seductive. The ocean is vast and unexplored. We discover new species constantly. The giant squid was a myth until it wasn't. So, why not the ultimate shark? The argument often points to the trench's immense pressure, darkness, and secrecy, a perfect hiding place for a relic population. But science, cold and clear, dismisses this. The reasons are the very same that caused its extinction. The Mariana Trench is a polar opposite of the megalodon's world. It is perpetually near freezing, devoid of sunlight, and crushingly pressurized. The megalodon was a warm-blooded predator of surface and mid-water realms, built for speed and power in the open ocean, not for survival in a lightless, high-pressure, resource-poor desert. Its physiology was not that of an abyssal creature. There is no ecological niche for a 50-ton, warm-bodied macro-predator in the trench. Nothing to eat, no giant whales descend there, and no way to maintain its metabolism. Furthermore, a breeding population would leave evidence. Whale falls, the carcasses of dead whales sinking to the deep, are studied by scientists. The scavengers that feast on them are documented. A megalodon would be the dominant scavenger and would leave unmistakable bite marks on bones. No such marks have ever been found on modern or recent fossil whale falls. The ocean, for all its mystery, is a connected system, and the signature of such a colossal animal would not go unnoticed. The persistence of the myth speaks not to biology, but to psychology. The megalodon represents a primal fear and fascination, the unknown monster in the deep. Its extinction is almost unfathomable. Something so powerful should still be here. The idea that it lurks in the last unexplored place satisfies a deep need for wonder and dread. But the truth is more profound, and in its own way, more awe-inspiring. The Megalodon is gone. Not hidden, but truly extinct. Its vanishing teaches us a humbling lesson about specialization, climate, and the fragility of even the most dominant forms of life. It was not defeated by a superior predator, but by the slow, inexorable shift of planetary gears. It was a king whose kingdom changed its borders and then dissolved beneath him. As we close this series, we are left not with a monster to fear, but with a ghost to admire. The Megalodon was one of evolution's most magnificent creations, a perfect predator for its time and place. Its 20-million-year reign is a testament to that perfection. Its passing is a reminder that all things, even the greatest, are subject to time and change. Now, let the soundscape complete its journey. The modern sonar ping fades. The cold, empty sounds of the deep ocean return, but now they are framed as a memorial. In the silence, if you listen closely, you might imagine the faintest echo of a deep, rhythmic pulse. Not a living heartbeat, but the memory of one, etched into the very pressure of the deep. The shadow is eternal, not because it survives, but because its impression on the history of life is permanent. You have journeyed from its birth in warm shallows, through its reign in the open blue, its duels with rivals, to its quiet fade in a cooling world. You have met the architect of its own destiny, and the forces that outbuilt it. The story of Megalodon is the ultimate ocean epic, written not in water, but in stone and in the silent, enduring lessons of extinction. Good night.